Hello friends, welcome to NSK tutorial. Today we'll discuss about user-defined exceptions. What is an user-defined exception? User-defined exception is nothing but the exception which is created by user. The exception which is not available in Java library is nothing but user-defined exception. Mostly user-defined exceptions are used in real-time application to display the custom exceptions. User-defined exception is also known as custom exceptions. To create a user-defined exception, we need to follow the below steps. The step number 1, we need to extend the class as exception or throwable or runtime exception. If we want to make user-defined exception as only runtime exception, we need to extend the class as runtime exception. If we want to make our class as compile time exception, then we need to extend the class as exception. All user-defined exception classes are subclass of exception class. If you see the below example, class myException is my class and I am extending this exception with exception class. Declaring inside a exception class, to declare the next step, we need to declare the default constructor. And also if we require, we need to declare the parameterized constructor. When we go for the default, when we go for the parameter. If required, we can declare both the constructors in the user-defined exception class. If we want to display a message to the user, then we can use the parameterized constructor. And if we no need to display any message to the user, then we can call the default constructor. The last and final step is to raise an exception, user-defined exception, and we need to invoke the exception class, and we need to pass the message if required, and we need to throw that exception. In our next step, we'll see the example how user-defined exception has created, and we'll execute and check what is the output we'll get. This is the example for user-defined exception class. Here, if you see this example, here I have created a balance not available exception class, and I am extending this with exception class. This is the predefined exception class. All subclasses of exception class has to be extended with the exception. That's why we have extended this class as exception. Then have declared a class member and default constructor and parameterized constructor. And I'm declaring one toString method. Let's come to the invoking area. This is my another class user-defined exception example class. Here inside the main method, I am initiating the value with 200. My balance is 200, and inside the try block, if balance is less than 1000, if I am trying to retrieve the balance, for example, take the real-time scenario banking application. When you go to ATM, if you try to retrieve the balance, there is a condition. If your balance is less than 1000, you cannot draw the amount. In that case, we need to show the message to the user. In that scenario, we need to check if balance is less than 1000. We need to throw the exception. Here inside the if condition, my balance is less than 1000, it is coming inside the block. I'm throwing this exception and I'm passing the minimum balance is not available. Once it has done, then this step I will show you in the example. Let's go to the Eclipse and we'll execute this. Now see, my balance is, this is my balance not found exception class, the same which I have created. Now go to the user defined exception class. Let's execute this. See here, balance not found exception is raised and the message is minimum balance is not available. And here at the end, the user defined exception has been handled. See this block of code, the exception, here we are getting an exception, we are throwing an exception. The next statement will not get executed. Enter the withdraw amount will not get executed. For as of now, let me comment this one. This particular piece of code will throw an exception and the control will come to the catch block and it will print the message. Once this piece of code has been handled or executed, the next statement has been executed. Now make the balance as 2000 and uncomment this. Just right click and execute. When we execute, the balance is valid. We can withdraw the amount. This exception has not raised and next statement has been executed. Enter the withdraw amount. So we can enter the amount, we can draw the money. The next statement has been executed. That's it, friends. This is the user defined exception example, and please practice this. Thank you very much. Please subscribe NSK tutorials.